Hey, everybody out there in Luqman Nation. I'm Abdul Shahi Luqman.
And I am Jackie Luqman.
And welcome to Coffee, Current Events and Politics in Luqman Nation, the most dangerous show on the internet.
Thanks for joining us tonight, y'all. We appreciate your patience and we appreciate you spending your Thursday evening with us. It is Thursday, August. What is today's date?
Is it 10th, I believe?
9th.
No, the 9th.
Actually.
The 9th, August 9th.
We're coming to you live from Washington, D.C., the belly of the beast.
That's interesting.
And we got a lot to talk about. So we've been away from live for a little while. We've been doing a lot of stuff. Been very, very busy. So we're just going to take a few minutes to give you guys a chance to hop on, to share this link with your friends, to invite some people on. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff tonight in 1 hour, and maybe even less. Because look, we're still kind of dragging from going to New Orleans, spending the last 5 days in New Orleans, partially for the Netroots conference. Yes, we went to that Democratic farce, and just regular work stuff. You know, the traveling back and forth, the political stuff. We've done a couple of shows this week. We've got another guest appearance coming up that is very exciting on another show, on a new show that we were invited on. So much stuff. So look, let's get to it.
Yeah, and I understand, we haven't been on for a while. We've done our live streams and stuff, but, we haven't really, we kind of been away from doing our regular streaming on Thursday. So this is really our return back to our regular scheduled programming. So, we're still trying to get the kinks out and stuff. But again, we're here and we're glad that you're here with us.
Yep.
And so anyway, we're going to get into it. One of the things that the show is called The Politics of Losing today, right? And the Democrats, Jackie, just don't seem to get it. Ben Jealous, who is running for governor in Maryland, had sort of what they call a faux pas.
A faux pas,
and all that entails.
Might as well be. It might as well have been a faux pas.
Yeah, something like that. Well, anyway, Larry Hogan, the popular governor of Maryland, who is running for election, and Ben Jealous is going against him. Larry Hogan, typical playbook from the GOP. He called Ben Jealous a socialist because Ben Jealous Ben Jealous advocates for universal health care, free education, all the Bernie Sanders type things that Bernie Sanders brought to the forefront in 2016. Ben Jealous is basically backing that type of platform. And so Larry Hogan said, oh, well, he's a socialist. And Ben Jealous just lost his mind. What happened was his first response, I'm going to be fair to him, his first response was pretty much, not muted, but it was pretty much, he didn't go off.
Okay.
So Ben Jealous, he was like, okay, I'm going to respond to this in a decent way. But then the reporter nudged him again about the socialist title. Then that's when he lost his mind. He said, I am not an effing socialist. And, are you out? No, well, actually the quote is, are you out of your effing mind?
Wow.
Right. Now, this caused some waves throughout the Democratic Party, because what happens is that now Democrats, the pussies that they are, the ones that were backing him, now all of a sudden now some key Democrats who were going to support him in this contest between him and Larry Hogan, all of a sudden now backing away. Now they're backing away. Now, Jackie, what is your take on that?
This whole fiasco with Ben Jealous and Larry Hogan in Maryland it just sort of encapsulates sort of what we experienced at Netroots, right? And the problem with the Democrats still have. First of all, let's attack the socialist issue, right? Let's deal with that.
Yeah, we have to.
Because I don't understand how Democrats don't respond to accusations of being socialists with this one key point. We have a middle class in this country because of one of the largest socialist programs ever passed in the United States of America.
Right.
And that was the New Deal. The New Deal it didn't basically create the middle class. It did create the middle class.
Yeah.
The New Deal not only helped to bring America out of the Great Depression. It wasn't the only thing, but it was one of the things. But it also created the government-backed vehicles for social mobility and wealth redistribution, primarily directed at white people, though, so there are problems with the New Deal that's a whole nother show. But the middle class exists. What's left of the middle class exists in this country today because of a ginormous socialist program called the New Deal.
Well, let's look at it under Franklin Roosevelt, who was the president during the time of the New Deal. Other things came out of his socialist, the socialist framework that Roosevelt was working with. One was Social Security.
Right. That's right.
Then you have a couple of times the government enacted socialist policies for the population. Medicare is one.
Right.
Food stamps.
Exactly.
All of these things. And then we go to after World War II, we talk about it all the time, that the GI Bill, basically a socialist program. Which was really the main driver that created the white middle class, was after World War II, and the return of soldiers came back. And that created the creations of the suburbs,
right?
As we know it now, So there was a few times that the government established these that was socialist in nature.
And the argument that GOP candidates make when they want to trash socialism, it's not like they're being disingenuous, right? They're not like making something else up,
right?
Because they've always hated the New Deal. They campaigned basically on rolling back some of the New Deal because they just never wanted to continue those programs. So I'm not even blaming Larry Hogan for trying to paint Ben Jealous as a socialist as a kind of a smear, because that's what the GOP does. They're playing true to form.
And Larry Hogan is not your typical modern day Republican. Here's a guy that has almost a 50% approval rating,
right?
Not just amongst his base, even a lot of people who support Democrats like Larry Hogan.
Yeah,
Larry Hogan has been, according to the people of Maryland, that they can live with, and a governor that they approve of him. He has a high approval rating. So for Larry Hogan, but then again, politics is a blood sport,
right? So
Larry Hogan, he knows how to go for the juggler. He's a socialist, so anyway, to forward this narrative, the Socialist Party of Maryland actually came out, and when Ben Jealous, he was so aggressive in denying that he's not a socialist.
No, I'm not a fucking socialist.
Right. So what happened was that the Socialist Party of Maryland came out and said, "Oh yes, you are a socialist because the policies that you're advocating for is socialism,
right?"
But this is, the GOP, and this is why I say why we call this the politics of losing, because the GOP, they don't lose their minds when they're called racist.
They don't.
You know what I mean?
They really don't.
Yeah. They don't lose their mind when they're called racist. They don't lose their minds when people who have Nazi ideas run under their ticket or call themselves GOP. Oh yeah, they might denounce them and say, "Well, I'm not." But you don't see, you don't see the GOP losing their minds behind this stuff. They don't even lose their minds when they have a sitting president. Because we have this this weekend. We have the white supremacists coming to DC. And so, when it was in Charlottesville, the sitting GOP president, Trump, gets up there and refused to denounce, totally white supremacist ideas. Nobody in the GOP lost their mind.
No.
Nobody lost their mind when Trump refused to denounce David Duke.
Nope.
But then here you have the Democrats coming around, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's a socialist, and He's a socialist. And now, and it's not so bad that Ben Jealous, who I'm really disappointed, because I think that the way to combat the GOP, this is the reason why we call it the politics of losing, because the Democrats, they're reactionary.
Yep.
As our friend John Kiriakis says, shout out to John Kiriakis on
Kiriakou.
Sorry, John. John Kiriakou, who that was something he always says.
Mm-hmm.
And the Democrats have been always reactionary, and here they are again. They're not, they're not standing their ground and say, well, if socialism means giving the people this, giving the people that, giving the people that, then I stand on that.
Right.
No, but what did they do? They tucked their tail. Well, he tucked his tail and ran, and those Democrats who were supposed to be backing him up, now all of a sudden, they're tucking their tails between their hind leg parts and going to.
Exactly. I mean, and what the GOP does whenever they're accused of, being racist or, being misogynist or whatever, and it's not like those things aren't true, but what they do is they don't pay too much attention to what they're called. What they do is they respond with these fake statistics. They lie.
Oh, yeah.
They lie, but they respond with their alternative facts. This is what the Democrats don't do.
Right.
Right. The Democrats get it, and then they talk about ideas and feelings, moral ideas and feelings, and then they don't want to be associated with certain titles or certain categories or certain people, but they never talk about policy, and they never talk about actual facts. What we just said about policies.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically democratic socialist policies that have been implemented in the United States, that's the answer for the Democrats. That really is the answer. That was the answer for Ben Jealous. And like you, I'm embarrassed for him, and I'm embarrassed because of him, because he's supposed to be the elected official who's got the experience and the education. And I don't understand how me with my high school diploma, I could come up with a better response than he did.
Yeah, and me as a dump truck driver could have came up. And this is why I say that it was a public relations disaster for Ben Jealous. Number one is the fact that you're going for governor. Is it that easy to knock you off your square?
Yes. And at Netroots, we saw why the Democrats keep like this thing with Ben Jealous is just like an encapsulation,
right,
of the spinelessness of the Democratic Party and how they won't embrace the policies. We're not talking about whether they like people or not, right? We're talking about why the Democrats will not embrace policies that will benefit the people they're trying to attract.
Right.
I mean, the policies are the argument. And this idea that the GOP comes back with, that, we can't afford this thing, because that's what they all say, right? That's the only argument they have. We can't afford it. I'm sorry, how do we afford a space force, but we can't afford universal health care? As incomplete as a solution as universal health care is to all the problems in our society, but it's a start. You mean we can afford a space force, but we can't afford free college education?
Well, and that's true. And number two, because I'm on this point about why I think it's a public relations disaster for Ben Jealous. Number two,
yeah.
So he gets up there, he drops the F-bomb, and the press is the press. So the picture that you see on the newspapers and on the internet that I saw is him angry. Right. He's on the stage and he's angry, and he got the microphone, he's angry, and he's got all this facial distortions, and stuff like that. And so now and again, here we are going back with the black caricatures of the black angry man, you know what I mean, which doesn't play well in American politics. Right. It never has. So, it doesn't play well in American politics. Getting back to your point, and we, getting ready to segue into that, because you already segued us into the U.S. Space Force. But just to end on this Ben Jealous thing, the reactionary strategy, that's not even strategy, the reactionary attitudes of the Democrats is going to continue to embolden GOP, the GOP, and we said this in the car. Because I don't want to miss this point, that the reason why the Democrats are knocked off their square like they are so easily, because they have allowed the GOP to control the political narrative for so long.
Exactly. And like we just said, the Democrats have plenty of reputation. They have plenty of history. They have plenty of facts to fall back on, because these new ideas that these politicians, these progressive politicians, are running on, the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes, and these other folks who are supposedly progressive politicians who are running as democratic socialists. These ideas that they're running on aren't actually new. They're not new ideas. They're ideas that either have been implemented before in this country, or giants of political wisdom or social and racial activism have talked about implementing them before. I mean, most people don't even realize that democratic socialist policies like free education and a federal jobs guarantee and universal health care, Martin Luther King Jr. talked about those things.
Martin Luther King Jr. spoke about those things, but also we have to remember this, which is often lost in this conversation when we talk about socialist policies, and this is the fact that all of the countries that we admire today, Norway, the Scandinavian countries, and all those countries that have a strong safety net, where government supports, I mean, everywhere where you have those type of socialist policies, they copied it off of the United States.
Exactly.
So I think that is something that is always missed in this conversation. When you spoke about the New Deal, when we spoke about Social Security and all this stuff, that didn't exist anywhere else on the planet.
It did not.
You know, right. So when after World War II, when nations, because the United States did another socialist program called the Marshall Plan, which was another major not global, but it was a major socialist plan of nation building, right? So after white folks gave money to white folks who suffered in war, because remember, they didn't build up Japan.
This is true. Yes, that's right. They built up Germany.
Right. They built up Germany and France and all that stuff. Right. So when white folks gave other white folks money and said, and got them back on their feet, that was socialism. White socialism, but was socialism. And so what happened is that when those countries became prosperous, and that's when you seen them able to put in place the socialist policy that they seen that the United States, that was making the United States working class prosperous. Right. They saw the United States society as prosperous, and the United States society, the working class was prosperous because not only these socialist policies, but then came unions and all this stuff. So a lot of these European countries who have all of this now, they base this off of the United States, because the United States after World War II was the not only came out as the strongest nation militarily, but economically too. That's other nations wanted to copy that.
Exactly. What's the difference? Other nations kept doing it because they saw the benefits of these programs in their citizenry. The United States, we're greedy, capitalist, white supremacist, cis male patriarchy run sweatshop, basically.
Right, but remember, Jackie, again, and see, this is the reason why Luqman Nation, we deal with history, because the United States wasn't always that way.
Always
under a Republican president, Dwight Eisenhower, the rich was taxed at over 90%.
Exactly. So the Democrats, when we were at Netroots, and this is the only thing we're going to say about Netroots, because we got plenty of content from Netroots, and we're going to be talking about Netroots, I think, tomorrow when we go on Loud and Clear. And maybe next week we'll talk to a couple people from the Black Ass Caucus. But we see these politicians, these Democratic politicians who gather at Netroots. They tell you it's a progressive political gathering, but it is sponsored and funded by the Democratic Party. Oh, definitely. And all of the people on the main stage are Democrats. And like we have always said, we'll vote for Democrats if their policies are right. So okay, even though we left the Democratic Party, we understand that there are some local down ballot races where there are some Democrats who are doing some real good work.
Yes,
Summer Lee, we met one of those people. Met a couple of those people.
Yeah, especially down in Louisiana, New Orleans.
Oh yeah, I mean,
quite a few.
Yes, so we don't have a problem with Democrats who are doing the work, but those people who are on that main stage, the Cory Bookers, the Kamala Harris,
the establishment,
the Tim Ryans,
right.
You know, these people are standing up there talking about, oh, we need to take our country back from the negative forces, and they're paying lip service to all this emotional feel-good stuff about racial progress, but they're not talking about the history of the kinds of policies that have made this the white economic middle class in this country as powerful as it was. They won't even do that. So to Brennan Proctor's point, Brennan said it sounds so self-sabotaging. It is. The Democratic Party, in being reactionary and not seizing a narrative that's already there, that civil rights activists, that leftists, that actual socialists, that up-and-coming Democrats who are progressive and push it out to the forefront. That's why they're going to keep losing in the general, in presidential
That's
election.
why we need a second party.
Third, yeah.
No, we need a second party because the Democrats have shown us that see, and this is where we have to really use our third eye on this, is that the Democrats, you know, they're intelligent people. You know, and they you know, a lot of these people, the Cory Bookers, and I'm very intelligent people. I know Cory Booker. I've worked with him. So I mean, so they're intelligent people. But at the same time, we have to understand that the goal of power, right, is to remain in power. What I'm saying is the fact that our government, this government, understands that they're pushing the population of revolt.
Yeah.
So what's happening is that the Republican and Democratic Party are really one party. And what Netroots has showed me, Jackie, is that the Kamala Harris and the Elizabeth Warrens and all them, Nancy Pelosi wasn't there, but you know, throw in there. Their job is to put cap on the smoldering anger of the American people, so that it doesn't go into, you know, come on, you know, all these, maybe not Booker and them yet, but most of these folks, the Pelosi's and the Schumers and all, they're all millionaires.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So when Trump passed the tax plan, I heard on the radio today they said, well, no Democrat voted for the tax plan. Well, they didn't have to. If you're a millionaire, you're going to benefit from it anyway.
Precisely. Exactly.
So I mean, so we have to know the politics of illusion. So, you know,
that's a good one.
Right. So you can sit back and say, oh, well, we were against it. You're a millionaire, multimillionaires in some cases. Dianne Feinstein and all multimillionaires. You were going to benefit from it anyway.
Exactly.
But, you know, so what I'm saying is, Jackie, just to make this point, is the fact that we have to understand that there's the reason why we're so frustrated, and the Democrats basically showed their hand that they are keeping the lid on dissent and this growing dissent amongst the working class of America and stuff. And they showed their hands when they could have had a successful candidate in Bernie Sanders, and they went out of their way to sabotage him because you know what? Because they understood, and America has always been against. Let's look at this. We can look at the social revolutions of the 60s. We can look at the social revolutions that time past, and especially when Black people throughout the history of this country showed dissent. Their government has always been about keeping the lid on what they on. In fact, let's talk about this. That Franklin Roosevelt was probably one of the few politicians who spoke to the industrialists of his time and told them, because what was happening was, and we spoke about this on the show before, people were getting ready to abandon capitalism.
Yep.
Communism, socialism, all of these other isms, fascism. There was Americans who wanted that because they seen that capitalism wasn't working. So Roosevelt, because the bankers and the industrialists, they wasn't hearing the people. And Roosevelt told them in his office, he said, use this money, or what happened in Russia with the Bolshevik Revolution is about to happen here.
Right.
He scared the hell out of them and told them, y'all want to keep that money? Y'all gonna have to give up some of it.
And what did they do?
They gave up some of it. Fund. The government doesn't have money, so the only way that he was able to put forward the New Deal and those others like Social Security and stuff is because he got through to these bankers. Remember, Roosevelt was from the wealthy class too.
Exactly.
So he knew how to speak that language and said, look, you see what they did to the czars over there?
They're going to do that to you.
Right. They're going to string you up.
And he actually said, and I'm not going to be able to stop them.
That's what he said. And I'm not going to be able to stop them. So you know what they did? They unasked a lot of that money. And that was used to fund the CCP, the New Deal, the WPA, and all those other things that the government put forward. So now is the fact that they learned that lesson. And when I say they, I'm talking about the government and the people going in the government. And what happened is that when we talked about how Eisenhower, how the rich was taxed at over 90% of the Eisenhower, we would not have been able, Jackie, to get the interstate highway system built under the way that government functions now, with defunding with all these tax cuts.
Right.
Eisenhower used those tax cuts to basically build the interstate highway system, and as far as other infrastructure,
exactly the tax, the high taxes, and the wealthy at that time were glad to pay those taxes because they saw what their money. See, rich people in this country love to lie to the rest of us because we believe it. That's why they do it. Right. That's why they do it. So they say, look, you can't tax rich people because they're the job creators. First of all, that's a lie. The federal government is probably the biggest, is maybe the second. I'll give them the second biggest job creator in the United States. Small businesses might be the first job creators, but that's even questionable when you consider the failure rate of most small businesses. But see, it's just incredibly high. So small businesses can't really be the biggest employers in this country. So there are a lot of lies floating around that there's plenty of information and data out there to combat, but we just like to listen to rich people tell us what the truth is. Yeah, because the job creators aren't the wealthy. The job creators are consumers. Thank you. So if you can have so you can have a product, and if nobody buy it, you ain't creating their damn job. But if you have something and people want it, so it's the consumers. And see, that's the mind. I'm trying to keep. But this is the mind screwing that do us, but by telling us that we need them more than they need us. And so what happened is that that's the reason why all of these corporations and stuff buy media. That's why they get into media, they get all this, because they want to promote the narrative to us that you need us more than they need you. And it's worked. It's worked when you got working folks. And I mean, we always say white working class, but a lot of black working class and others too, who believe that it's in their best interest when rich people keep their money. What do we say all the time? It's all connected. All connected. It is all connected. It's not like an accident that, 6 corporations now own almost all of the media outlets in this country. That's not an accident. They really are like literally brainwashing the entire population to feel good about, like you said, rich people keeping all their money. Yeah, it's like somehow that's going to benefit the working class. Even, I mean, you and I at least go back to the Reagan years when we first heard about trickle down economics. Right. And even then, I mean, that was like over 30 years ago. And how economics trickled down to anybody? You know what I mean? So they got us believe, and we didn't have as much corporate owned media we do today. We did not. Right. So now you got rich people who control the information that's being disseminated to us, and you got government who is saying that they're giving taxes and stuff. Oh yeah, they'll throw little crumbs our way. So you got
working class people say, "Oh, I see the little increase in my check," but what did they do? They said, "Yeah, but your tax breaks ain't gonna be permanent."
Exactly.
But you know, you see them.
The corporate tax breaks are our
Right.
tax breaks. The little bit, that $30 extra that we get, that we can afford.
Right.
The a membership to Costco now. All of a sudden, in this area, the $30 ain't gonna get you a membership to Costco. But
right.
But our tax cuts expire like after next year. The tax cuts that the big banks and the corporations get, theirs are forever. Unless the next administration overturns those tax cuts. I mean, and we're sitting here talking about seeing that our paychecks are not getting bigger, seeing that the cost of living is going up, the cost of housing is going up, tuition is going up, healthcare is going up. All this stuff costs more money for us to afford, but our paycheck corporations that are reaping in these record profits, partially because of these incredible tax breaks that they got, and also partially because they are working us. And we are the most productive workforce in the world. We are also the least compensated compared to our production. And we're sitting here believing these lies these people are telling us, that it's in our best interest for these corporations to pay lower taxes, although we've never seen that happen.
Well, any slave is always going to be the most productive worker. I mean, even during slavery in the United States and elsewhere. I mean, we just toured the Whitney plant, and it was amazing how industrialized that plantation was in order to produce the amount of sugar and other products that they did with just a human workforce. So I mean, United States has a lot of experience in getting a slave population, whether it was Africans in the beginning, or whether United States and the business class in this country has always been good at exploitation of resources. So when Trump gets out there and hypes about the 4.1% GDP rise and all this stuff, and you said this, which was which is true. I mean, we look at them like, yeah, USA, 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 but at the same time, that news that he announced, he was speaking to other people like him, saying we just made more money.
Exactly.
Because none of those things trickled down this segment before we go on to the next one. The Democrats, to me, are purposely, I'm not talking about Ben Jealous. I don't think that he has a clue about this, that other established Democrats, they come to places like Netroots and stuff, first of all, to get a gauge on what's fomenting in the grassroots. That's number one. They're there to get a gauge on it, and then they're there to co-opt it, because their whole game is to co-opt any grassroots movement and basically just piss on the fire.
That's exactly what they did, or what they tried to do. But you know how we do when Black people who are really about that life in politics get together and we see the stuff is not right, we do something. If you look at our coverage from Netroots Facebook page and on our YouTube page, you'll see what we did. And on Twitter, look up the hashtag Black Ass Caucus and see what happened with that. That was some really good stuff, and we're really, really, really proud to have been a part of that. So, okay, moving along. So we talked a little bit about Space Force.
Yeah.
Now, I'm still laughing at this because I still have like images of Starship Troopers in my head. That's one of my favorites. About this story, the way I felt about people believing that Donald Trump wouldn't be elected, right? I was like, how history of the way this government in various ways had so many people in various ways, given like the nearly schizophrenic, almost psychotic nature of this national whatever it is, the way we think of ourselves and conduct ourselves as Americans. How did you figure this wasn't going to happen? Like when Donald Trump was elected, we were actually laughing that night.
Yeah.
People were crying that Hillary Clinton lost, and we were just like, for months, before the election, we were just like, I'm telling you, she's not going to win.
Right.
Trying to tell you she's not going to win. Trying to tell you these people have been waiting for this dude for 50 years. They've been planning for somebody like him for 50 years. We're trying to tell you this is it for them. This is like their prom. You don't understand.
They were waiting for their Führer.
They were waiting for their white Republican
Führer.
Messiah.
Yeah.
They were waiting for their Führer. They've been planning for this dude, for this. It didn't have to be Trump. And this is what we were trying to tell people.
Right.
It didn't have to be Trump. It was just it's the ideology that they had been working toward for 50 years. And they finally got it. People didn't believe it was going to happen. He won that night. People crying in the convention center and all that kind of stuff. So his idea a few months ago about wanting a space force. And while on the surface, it is funny because it does sound ridiculous. We knew that we knew they were going to do it.
Yeah. Well, Mike Pence, Vice President Pence laid out an ambitious plan Thursday. And this story comes from the Washington Post. All right, just to give them credit for it. So the Vice President Pence laid out an ambitious plan Thursday that would begin creating a military command dedicated to space and establish a space force as the 6th branch of the U.S. military as soon as 2020, only in 2 years. The first since the Air Force was formed shortly after World War II. Pence warned, and this is their excuse, because, they have to have a boogeyman. Right. So Pence gave them that. Because, people are like, well, why do we need a space force? Well, they got an answer for that.
Yep.
So Pence warned of the advancements that potential adversaries are making, mainly Russia and China, and issued what amounted to a call to arms to preserve the military's dominance in space. He's quoted as saying, just as we've done in ages past, the United States will meet the emerging threats on this new battlefield. Listen to this language. This new battlefield, he said in a speech at the Pentagon, quote, the time has come to establish the United States Space Force.
Now, as much as we are sitting here laughing, I'm sorry, just that they're actually calling it Space Force for real, in real life. I just think it's pathetically hilarious. It's pathetic because they're really that like unintellectual. It's hilarious because it is funny, but it's also tragic. It's hilarious in an incredibly tragic way for not just for politics, but we're talking about for our posterity now, yours and mine and our posterity. You know why? Not because the term Space Force is so funny, not because the idea that they are talking about weaponizing space is so
which
funny,
they've already really done.
Yeah. But here's why this is so tragic. Mike Pence, under this administration, has just made an announcement in public that the United States has no intention of never being at war. Let me rephrase that, because maybe that sounded a little bit confusing. This administration has just declared that it will continue to wage war, even in space where we don't have any actual enemies.
He labeled it the new battlefield.
I mean,
not a potential battlefield. He didn't say, if space becomes a potential battlefield. No, He said it's the new one.
They have declared it a battlefield before anybody else has gotten there and said, hey, United States, we're calling you out to a space battle. That I just and to make the argument that we're trying to beat another country to establishing a battlefield in space, that's on its face, it's ridiculous. Right, because let's talk about Russia. We were saying this earlier about Russia. So why is the idea of Russia being?
Let's first say, we have to first put out there that there's been treaties signed between the United States and Russia mainly about the weaponization of space. These treaties go back to the 60s. So in order for the United States to go on this path, then they're going to have to discard treaties and agreements that was made between the United States and Russia. One was not putting weapons on the moon.
Right.
One was, not using space as a means of, as they're saying, a new arena for warfare. So there's already treaties on the books that the United States and Russia had signed to prevent this. So now we're going into a new dangerous direction, where the fact that now they're going to have to discard these treaties, or the United States may just ignore these treaties. And, it's not the United States to walk away from treaties. They do it all the time.
Exactly.
But I'm going to tell you why this is also tragic to me, Jack. And I love what your point is. Another point why I see this as tragic. I remember watching documentaries of when we first got into space, mainly the space age, the United States space age really took off under John F. Kennedy.
Right.
When he made his impassioned speech about putting a man on the moon and all that stuff.
Right.
And during that time, the goal of the space program was to use space and space exploration to better the condition of mankind. This is what they publicly stated. Now, I don't know what was said behind closed door, but this was publicly stated to the American population.
Right.
Now they don't even try to hide that anymore.
Right.
And what really I think is even more tragic. Right now, you have the largest wildfire burning in in California, that is the size of Los Angeles, and every expert who studied it say that this is a result of climate change. The heat waves, the wildfires in Europe, and the heat waves in Europe, and the drought, all these climate change events that we are witnessing has been caused by industry, mainly the fossil fuel industries, that knew that this was going to take place 40 years ago. Right. When they studied it. Now, in order for them to commission a study, they must have concerns about it. So they commissioned the study, and they was hoping that the study would go their way, where scientists would say, "Oh, y'all can keep on burning coal and stuff. It's not going to affect the atmosphere." But the scientists came back and said, "No, if we keep on this trend, it's going to affect the environment in a significant way." But they went along with profits over everything else, because the scientists say, "Well, that's going to be about maybe 40 years from now. Oh, well, we'll all be dead. Right. Let our kids figure that out."
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So this is the problem I have with the space thing. Is because once again, we're given a new, well, I won't say new. But what I'm saying is that once again, industry, corporations and stuff are being allowed. The Navy and the Air Force are already now, once they got this announcement, started to commission new weapon systems. So we already have a planet that is under environmental stress. Right. So now we're going out in space, and we don't know what these weapons are going to do. We don't know what these weapon systems, what kind of additional harm. And because we're not just talking about the United States, now this forces China to get into it. Right. This forces Russia to get into it. So now, again, we're talking about we're talking about a planet that's already stressed environmentally. And now we're talking about industry who now has a new Etch-a-Sketch. Exactly. Exactly. You know what I mean? They're giving an Etch-a-Sketch. And we as Americans, as the population in this country, should be even more outraged that you could come up and say to our faces that there's no money for universal health care, there's no money for daycare, there's no money to support working families, there's no money for affordable housing, there's no money for all of this, but yet you can sit up there and announce that there's going to be a new battlefield space, and you just write the Pentagon another blank check. We should be going down. Instead of the right to the alt-right coming down here, everybody from this country, after hearing this, should be coming to DC and ready to burn some shit up.
Something should be on fire. And let's be clear about what this announcement means, because you said industry several times. Let's be clear about what industry we're talking about. We're talking about the military-industrial complex. Exactly. The military-industrial complex that Dwight D. Eisenhower warned us about so many decades ago, to be careful of the military-industrial complex, to ensure that it does not grow beyond your ability to control it. That's what he said. And we've done that. We've done that. So now what this announcement does is says to the defense contractors, look, don't worry, guys. We'll make sure that you have work and you will have money almost in perpetuity, because you see, defense contractors are always working on the next generation war fighter. That's what they call soldiers now in defense contractor jargon. They don't call them soldiers anymore. They don't call them militia. They don't even really call them military. They call them war fighters.
Wow.
And it's just
sounds like something they grow in a laboratory just for war.
Well,
yeah.
So these are people who are sitting in engineering think tanks and design rooms and programmers and all this kind of stuff, and mechanical engineers, and they're coming up with the next generation warfighter weapon. They're coming up with the next generation helicopter, tank, anti surface to air missile, that kind of stuff that we use on Earth to kill each other. But now there's this brand new frontier that this administration has opened up for the defense, for the military industrial complex and the defense contractors that support it. There's no bench strength in this area. It's like, for those who are watching who are like programmers, it's like when cloud computing first came out, right? There were all these hardwired server server programmers who understood how to program on physical servers. Well, this idea of virtual servers were new. So you had to get a bunch of new people in who had that experience. And you had to train some of those people who already existed, but then you had some other people who were coming into the industry. So then this industry got bloated with physical servers never went away. There's just this separate thing called cloud computing virtual servers. That's exactly what's going to happen with space warfare and Earth war. It is exactly what's going to happen.
And this is the reason why this should concern everybody. Number one is the reason why Mike Pence calls space the next battlefield, because the United States has already saturated the Earth with military infrastructure. Now, listen to this. There's not a place on this planet that the United States doesn't have military apparatus set up somewhere.
There is not.
So they got a ring about, we showed you on this program, the maps of maybe not every, but the maps of most American bases, to the point where the whole planet is saturated with American military apparatus. So now, just like everything else, and the way that this country was founded by Europeans coming here, Europeans that came here, they wasn't satisfied with just staying on Plymouth Rock. They wasn't just satisfied with the Pennsylvania colonies. They looked west. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, God said, what was that thing, divine, help me out, the divine thing.
I don't know.
Well, whatever it was.
Right now, yeah.
Well, they
manifest destiny.
Manifest destiny. Yeah. So they came up with this concept of manifest destiny in order to dispossess of the native people of their land and stuff, and to move forward, to expand. It was still militarism.
Right.
It was still militarism. It was still the conquering, the murdering, and the appropriation of native lands through militarism.
Right.
So now that ideology has not changed. So now when you got the whole planet saturated with military base and stuff, what is the next frontier to expand their militarism? That's why he called it the new battlefield. And that's why it should concern every one of us, because now it's like, okay, we got the Earth shut down. So now, real leadership, Jackie, and to you guys out there in Luqman Nation, real leadership would have been to go to the same industrial complex and say, all of you geniuses at Lockheed Martin and all of you defense contractors, how about we use those intelligent designers and engineers and stuff, and let's build instead of building Navy ships that we don't need, let's build ships that can clean up the ocean of plastics. Let's take that military money and switch it and say, okay, let's design ships to clean the plastics off the ocean. Let's design machinery that can remove pollutants out of waterways,
right.
and let's and let's take that money that we're giving you guys the militarized space. Real leadership would say, well, we're going to take that money and make sure that the waters in Flint are clean, to make sure that we So this is what a civilized nation does. Question, and not only question, but I am of the opinion that we don't have a government of civilized people.
No, we do not. We do not. And our friend Morlingall Amathar said that China had announced plans for a directed microwave satellite and moon base. Okay. I mean, our taxes don't go to China's budget. So listen, we don't have a shortage of weapons that can't already kill everybody on this planet quite a few times over. So I mean, if I have to piggyback on what you said, to respond to an unsubstantiated threat, and I don't even take that as like a threat. Somebody from China saying, "Hey, we're going to put a microwave on the moon and point that microwave at you."
Let me say this on that point. It's not the first time that governments made announcements just to scare a potential enemy into to act way. Reagan's Star Wars announcement.
Yes.
When President Reagan announced Star Wars, it scared the Russians shitless.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Russian engineers said this can't be done.
Yep.
But they didn't know if the United States really had the technology. Mm-hmm. But every Russian engineer and scientist who studied this so-called Star Wars weapon system said there's no way they could build this.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? They were right, but they didn't want to. They didn't want to. They weren't really sure if the United States had the capability, but they were quite sure that the United States didn't have that technology. Then it came out that Star Wars was a ploy by the administration of the Defense Department to basically scare Russia, which propelled. You want to know why the Soviet Union collapsed? Star Wars was a big part of it, because the Russians knew that if the United States had this, we don't have the resources to come up with an alternative weapon system. Wow. We don't have that. And so another thing is that Russian government was like, well, damn, if they could do that, right. So governments have always been announcing shit in order to fool other governments. That's how the game is played. So when you sit up there and tell me, well, China said they putting a microwave on the moon and stuff. Well, we told the Russians that we was going to put up Star Wars in space, knowing damn well we ain't had the capability to do it.
So that begs the question, and then we got to move on. Why would the United States do that? Well, to weaken the Russian economy. That's why. Because they knew that was going to be Russia's response. They knew that Russia was going to say, "Oh my God, we don't think the United States can implement Star Wars." But we
ain't willing to bet the bank
right,
on it.
But if they can, we're not willing to bet the motherland on
right.
it. So let's throw all of our money into our military to defend ourselves against this possible
there you
threat.
Go. That's what happens.
So when I look at this kind of thing coming out of China saying, "Oh, we're going to put," if that's where it came from, or we're going to put a satellite on the moon and direct the satellite at you. That is exactly, if that's true, China's playing chess and the United States just got played. And we are going to play because we don't understand foreign policy. We don't understand the history of foreign policy, and we don't pay attention to what our own government is doing right under our nose. We should have yanked the Department of Defense back 40 years ago.
Yeah.
When Dwight Eisenhower told us to.
Yeah.
But we didn't, because we keep listening to these politicians who talk about being strong on defense and protecting the United States. Protecting us from who? We are the second to the Chinese only because of their population. We are the largest and most powerful military on the planet. We spend more on our military, and we have more military hardware. Aircraft carriers, helicopters, fighter planes, everything than the next 10 countries combined.
And we spend more money on our military than Russia and China combined. And they're supposed to be our two major adversaries.
Right.
So when I hear something about China making an announcement about putting something on the moon, let me tell you something. I know it's bullshit. I know it's bullshit because, see, the thing of it is the fact that the Chinese is never going to out-militarize the United States.
No.
They're not. And, I mean, they're the second strongest economy. They got a lot of money and stuff like that. But let's be clear. The military-industrial complex in the United States is 60 years old. The Dwight Eisenhower was the president in the 50s. So over 60 years, the United States been on this trek for the military-industrial complex. China's basically new on this. So the Chinese military growth. China is just now their navy is just now venturing to other parts of the world.
Right.
This has just happened within the last couple of years. You know what I mean? So for the Chinese to make that announcement, the United States they've been at this game a long time.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, the military-industrial complex, the United States been playing this for 60 years. China maybe for maybe the last 30. If that really. So so again, governments in the past have always thrown threats out there in order to see what the reaction of their so-called potential adversary is going to be. We know this because Reagan played it with Star Wars. That's why we need, as American population, stop being so damn anti-intellectual and start realizing that history is there for us to learn from.
Yep. Morgan Hall said, sorry to take up so much of the conversation. You ought to know by now we love those distractions. That's not even a distraction. We got to make it plain.
All right,
but we do have 10 minutes left.
We got 10 minutes left,
yeah. So leadership. All right, leadership. We're going to end on this story. I don't know if you mentioned some new IRS rule was penned by Secretary of Treasury. Is that what he is? Steve Mnuchin, right?
He is the Treasury Secretary.
Yeah, he is the Secretary.
Well, he's the nominee.
Well, no, he is now, he
right?
is Secretary, Treasury Secretary now. Good. This is another reason why the Democrats stay losing. Because, see, we don't hold them accountable for when they don't stand up for us. Steve Mnuchin should not be the Secretary of the Treasury. Now, he used to be the CEO, the president and CEO of One West Bank out in California. One West Bank was like the largest mortgage financier in California.
Right.
And they were caught discriminating against customers, defrauding their customers in that big foreclosure mortgage fraud thing, right? His former bank was fined like $89 million. That's like sofa. That's like money that they have in the cushions of the sofa in the lobby.
Spare change, right?
They're like, oh, the fines that the California AG said that we have to pay for discriminating against customers and getting them and foreclosing on their homes and causing the housing bubble here in bubble to burst here in California. Oh, our fine is $89 million. Bob, go down to the lobby and shake the cushions in the sofa and get that 89. That's how little that this money it makes to them compared to how much money they made off of the continuing misery of homeowners. And it is continuing. Where does Democratic leadership come in this? At the time this case came forward in California, Kamala Harris was the Attorney General in California. Her staff, her Department of Justice of California, urged her to charge this man, among some other people, with something. Now, Mnuchin may not have gone to prison. We're not Iceland. We're not sending bankers to prison. We don't do that here.
Even though we should.
Yeah. Even though there's nothing in the world stopping us from doing it.
Right.
We're just, I guess we're not homogenous enough to send bankers to prison.
That's right.
Like, the only reason people in Iceland and Denmark and Sweden can have universal and socialized services is because they have a homogenous population. I guess having a homogenous population is the only way that we can jail some bankers who steal from hardworking Americans. Right. Kamala Harris was urged to charge Steve Mnuchin with something. And I can't remember what the charge was. He probably wouldn't have gotten any jail time for it, but he would have had that taint, that smear, that scar on him as a charged and convicted federal felon.
Well, he wouldn't be Treasury Secretary, that's for sure.
Which might have knocked him out of the running,
right,
to be Secretary of the Treasury. But alas, Kamala Harris did not charge Steve Mnuchin with anything.
And why you don't think she did charge him with anything?
Well, because Kamala Harris be rich too. And she knew she wasn't going to be Attorney General of California all her life. She didn't want to piss off the group of people who she would one day might want to get a job from. She didn't want to piss off the group of people who one day she might want to have to go to fund her presidential campaign.
Exactly. Yep.
So Kamala Harris doesn't charge Steve Mnuchin, former president and CEO of One West Finance in California, with anything. He gets away scot-free. And ends up being selected by Donald Trump to be the Secretary of the Treasury, and has now written a little paragraph or so in some new IRS rules that gives major financial institutions $12 billion extra free dollars.
Now this is the thing. This is where we go down the Luqman trail of explanation on all of this. Why Kamala Harris, why Barack Obama, and why Eric Holder and all the rest of them, why nobody go to jail in this country.
Why come?
Well, because it's a sin. Now I'm going to explain why I mean that. Capitalism is a religion here.
Yeah.
So capitalism is a religion, and those who are the disciples, the adherents, the priesthood of capitalism, you can't go to the church and violate. You can't go to any church or any religious institution and violate the clergy. Well, the bankers are the clergy of capitalism. Capitalism is a religion, and so no one is going to violate the temples of their religious ideology. Now that might sound, because I know I can see people like, oh, what? Capitalism is a religion in this country. It's like any other religion. Is the fact that the edifices and all of the sacredness of any religion is always protected, and the most protected are what I call the priesthood class. Yeah. And that's what the bankers are. They're the priesthood class of this. You know, and people make pilgrimage. The bankers make pilgrimage to the Federal Reserve. You know what I mean? They make pilgrimage to these places. Folks, if you don't believe me, it's a religion. And what is a religion? A religion is a way of life. Yep. That is what a religion is. So it's a religion, a way of life. The reason why these guys are not prosecuted, the reason why nobody goes to jail and all of this kind of stuff, because it is a sin. If you are adherent to capitalism, you don't go and violate the Pope. You don't go and violate the bishop. You don't go and violate all the priests that's running around. No matter what you don't do that, because it's considered an offense to God. And what is it? The God, what is the God of capitalists? The God of capitalists is profit. You know what I mean? It's profit.
And it's demigod.
Right. So for me to do that, for me to send Mnuchin to jail, who's a low-level disciple on this, and and all this other kind of stuff, then what I'm doing is I am violating the religion of capitalism. It's a sin, And so when we look at it in that sense, that is a reason why no one goes to jail. That is a reason why that the Eric Holder and nobody was prosecuted for being responsible for the worst recession since the Great Depression. A lot of people should have went to jail for that and the misery that it caused throughout the country. But when capitalism is your religion, because we say this all the time. You read the Bible, and I don't mean to get off on this, but I'm just going to say this. You read the Bible, and when the Israelites won, God was cool. When the Israelites lost, it wasn't God's fault. It was that the Israelites did something that God didn't like.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So God was never responsible. It's the same way in capitalism. You know what I mean? When the economy grows, then capitalism
is wonderful.
But when you have recessions and stuff,
you lazy bastards.
You should have read the fine print. Why didn't you read the fine print? Taking these damn mortgages you couldn't afford. But it's never capitalism's fault.
Capitalism's fault when things go wrong.
So when you got stuff like that, it's when you put all your faith in something like that, where the system never bears responsibility for failure, it's a religion.
Ooh, and see, we got to end on that note. But I got to read Shirley Vick's comment. Mnuchin also donated to Kamala Harris's campaign.
Ah, there you go.
There you go.
There you go.
And on that note, we love it so much when our friends and our fam come in and prove our theories right. Thank you all very much for joining us tonight. And listen, if you like what you see and hear on Luqman Nation, please consider becoming a patron with monthly contributions through Patreon. And if you can't do a monthly contribution, just consider supporting Luqman Nation any way you can with anything, either through GoFundMe or PayPal. You can find us on all three of those platforms, searching under Luqman Nation, LuqManNation.
And if you're new to us, please subscribe and share this video, because truth will always have its day on Luqman Nation. I mean, we already got haters already, people that's hating on us, but that comes with the territory. Once again, we have a couple of dates coming up.
We do. On tomorrow, we will be on Loud and Clear. We'll be doing our regular weekly midterm roundup with our friends Brian Becker and John Kiriakou. That is on Loud and Clear Radio, on Sputnik Radio, and 105.5 FM in the Washington, D.C. area. That usually airs at 4:30 Eastern Time, but you can also hear the podcast of it on our page or on the Loud and Clear page. I got to remember all this stuff. When we post it, usually posted around the next day. On Saturday, this is so exciting. I am so excited. On Saturday, we will be guests on Dr. Wilmer Leon's show, on his show on Sirius XM Radio from 1 to 2 o'clock. I forgot the name of the show. I wrote it down at work. Is it Urban View?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's Urban View. Dr. Wilmer Lee. If you don't know who Dr. Wilmer Leon is, you are not a fan of politics, and you certainly aren't a fan of black politics. But we are going to be guests on Dr. Wilmer Leon's show this Saturday from 1 to 2 o'clock p.m. On Sirius XM Radio. Ooh, I got palpitations just thinking about that. I'm so excited. Let's see. Sunday is the counter protest for the anniversary of the Unite the Right rally. There is a larger protest that is going on in Charlottesville, Virginia, that our friends, the Virginia Defenders, are going to cover. We will be at the counter protest with the Answer Coalition here in Washington, D.C. at Lafayette Square, and we hope to bring you some coverage of that, but we don't know how security is going to be, so just look out, keep a lookout Saturday afternoon after 12 o'clock to check that out. Is that it?
That's it. And thank you for joining us. You just witnessed Coffee Current Events and Politics with My Nation, the most dangerous show on the internet. Tell your friends. And that's it. Good night.
Good night.